And John Browning, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I exercised yesterday. I didn't exercise today. You motivated me from that last podcast about going to your exercise thing and being consistent. So I've set myself up to exercise like 3 or 4 days a week now, so I can be consistent with that. And I'm working on it. So you've influenced me.
All right. I love that. I love
Appreciate
that.
that. Yeah.
I went yesterday too, and they told me, you got to rest in between. So I rested.
Yep.
They said something about working out core every day. So I try and do that every day, but everything else, it's like every other.
Yeah. Well, I like to exercise one day and rest for 6, and exercise one day and rest for 6. They didn't think that I got it. I'm not sure what's going on, but the other thing that I don't get, and why we're talking today specifically, is you financial gurus throw around these little acronyms and phrases that you understand, but we don't. So today I want you to unpack for me. All right, what's the similarities and the differences between a 401k, an IRA, and a Roth? Can you do that? Because to me they are very similar, but I know there are some differences. What are those differences?
Sure, we can go through that, and it's also important for people to know that there are more than just those three, and it can be really important and can be very beneficial for people to know about those other things that are out there.
Okay.
Depending on their personal situation, because again, this is a podcast, not investment advice.
Right.
This is strictly general information that you can use, and you can, sort of the more you know, the better. But there are some other things out there for them. I'll just leave it at that. There's things called SEPs. There's Keoghs. There's pension. There's still pension plans still exist.
Sure.
And can be beneficial, especially for certain types of small businesses, which is really interesting. And a lot of people overlook that that's out there. But I don't want to get people confused about all those different things. To answer your direct question, 401ks, and there's also something called a 403b. Okay. And those are generally not-for-profit organizations have those 403bs.
Okay.
And they are different. They are not the same. Most people say, oh, they're the same thing. They're not quite the same.
Oh, okay.
So the biggest difference is 403bs for the issuing organization, like whether it's a church or a foundation or whatever the charitable organization is. It's much easier to administer for that organization.
Okay.
Not nearly as many hoops that you have to jump through as an organization. That's the biggest difference. So if you are part of a not-for-profit organization, I encourage you to get in touch with me just by texting the word life to 21,000 or going out to the website, guardianrockwealth.com, and we can talk about some of those ideas for you. But a 401k is what I call, generally speaking, a good option. It's not a great option. So let me explain that for a minute. I am not saying don't participate in your 401k. You absolutely should participate in the 401k. The reason it's a good option is because often the company will match what you put in, and there's no way any financial advisor can beat 100%.
That's right.
Return. That's fantastic. So contribute up till at least the point at which your company matches that 401k. The reason I say it's a good option, not a great option, is because you lack a lot of control. There's usually limited options, and some 401ks are better than others, depends on the company. So if you leave a company and you just leave your 401k just sort of sitting there, isolated, I call them orphaned assets.
There you go.
Right? Then that's not usually a great idea for a number of reasons. One is you don't have as much control over it. Number two, it tends to be good options, not great options. Number three, do you think you're really going to remember shoot, even if it's there, right? 20, 30 years down the road, you'll probably remember that it's there, but will you remember who to contact, how to contact them, and how to get it withdrawn? And will you know how to withdraw it for the best tax advantage?
Not a chance.
Is pretty much zero. Between 0 and -1.
Right, exactly.
Or at least that it will be easy to figure out, right?
That's right.
So I always encourage people to consolidate things, put them all into what they call an IRA, or an individual retirement account.
Okay.
Okay. And there are two main types of individual retirement accounts. One is called a Roth and one is called just a regular IRA. And I think you and I were talking a little bit about this, right? And you came up with a great analogy. Remind me what IOU to the IRS.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Your IOU to the IRS, because as I understand it, if you have your money in a traditional 401k, that my money goes in pre-tax, but I take it out later in life when I'm retired, taxable. Right. And so the money I'm saving, all of it's not mine. The government has a portion of that they've helped me tax deferred. Is that the right term?
That's a good term. Yep.
Okay. I think that's how I understand it
You are correct. And there is such a thing as a Roth 401k, which we won't get into because I don't want to confuse people or make this a really long podcast.
There you go.
But the difference between a regular IRA and a Roth IRA is that it's kind of the opposite of that. And while people they really think, hey, not paying taxes now is a really good thing.
Right.
And it is. You're right. I mean, it is. But if you really think about this and think about the math on it, right? The whole idea is that you want to grow this over the next 20 or 30 years, right? So would you rather pay tax, given that tax is charged as a percentage of what you have? Would you rather pay tax on a little bit now or a whole lot later?
Yeah.
So if you have the option, and there's rules as to whether or not you can use a Roth, there's income rules and all that kind of stuff, which we can help you with, of course. But if it's a possibility, the idea of a Roth 401k or a Roth, ROTH, by the way, Roth, if that's an option for you, I typically suggest that's what you use. And there's even a way that you can convert that 401k that you've been contributing to, and you don't have to contribute, you don't have to convert the whole thing to a Roth. You can convert just part of it. And the reason people will say, oh, I don't want to do that, is because you got to pay a big tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, especially if you've got a big nut that you've built up over, say, a couple decades or something like that, maybe it's 500,000, right? If you convert all that to a Roth because you become eligible to do that, a Roth IRA, it's a really big tax bill all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tend to encourage people to do is let's do the math on this. Let's see what's reasonable, what you can afford. And maybe you do a partial Roth conversion today, and maybe you wait a little while and then you do another little bit. You do it along the way. And the other, there's other ways to do that. You can wait to do that conversion for a little bit of time to when maybe you're not making as much money and you're taxed at a lower income tax rate.
Yep.
There's all sorts of different things to talk about.
Right. Well, and that's somebody mentioned that to me, and when I was having this conversation, because the 401k was sold to my parents anyway, and probably to me, that when you're in retirement, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So that's why it's okay to save money this way, to defer your taxes, because you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Well, that's not always the case. Right. Number one. Number two, tax rates might be going up. And so that whole concept that you just talked about of being able to convert something that's in a 401k into a Roth might make sense. But it comes to a conversation, right? Through a financial planner, financial expert like yourself, to go, here's what I got. Here's what I'm trying to do. What makes sense?
It comes down to what's right for you.
Yeah.
and what's right for you is not the same as what's right for your neighbor. And isn't that where we get most of our financial advice, right? At the water cooler or at the neighborhood, barbecue pit, right? Or
Right.
whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because those people aren't asking the questions that you ask your clients. They're not my retirement is vastly different than many people, because of my wife and I and how we view things and how we look at things. And our goals for life and retirement is not to amass $18 million, right? That's just not who we are. So we've structured things differently. And if we have that water cooler discussion, most people look at us like we're batty. That's okay. It's us, right? But too many times those conversations don't happen at the water cooler. They should happen with your financial advisor, like John Browning at Guardian Rock Wealth, to say, this is what we're trying to accomplish.
That's right. And the other thing about those water cooler conversations that I have found in my experience is that they're extremely one-sided. I invested in XYZ stock and it went up to $1 gazillion in 2 months and I'm amazing. What they didn't tell you about is all the other sort of flyers. I call those flyers that you just throw out there and see if you can get some money.
That's great.
It's, by the way, not a bad thing if that's your entertainment budget and that type of thing, but
it is funny.
They're one-sided.
The other two things about the water cooler things is, one, you never see those people when the market is down or they've lost money. And two, they never really tell you how much they've invested. My investment was up 68%. I only invested $5, but it was up 68%. It's like, okay, shut up. So I'm sorry. But that's what it's like my sports team, right? All of that. That's not how you want to plan your life, your financial life anyway. You need to plan it with somebody like you in your corner, John, with Guardian Rock Wealth and John Browning, to really build your life the way you want it, to have a portfolio that is constantly managed, adjusted, and that connects with who you are and what you're trying to do in life. Not just in retirement, but today. And as your kids grow up, you've got growing kids, I've got growing kids, we've got college expenses and weddings coming up and all kinds of things that's all part of the financial plan that you, John, help your clients work through and talk through to say, what makes sense right now? And how do we afford this thing that we want? I've got a wedding coming up in next May for my son. Well, how can I afford that? What's the best way? And that's why you have conversations with you and you say, well, we could do this or that.
Right.
Rarely is there one answer.
Very rarely is there one answer. That's right.
So that's the cool thing. So that's why I always ask people to reach out to you. GuardianRockWealth.com, John Browning. You can text him at 21,000 or text the word life to 21,000 on your phone, and you'll get John's contact information. You will see a cute video there of him, and see his book. There's all kinds of fun things there. Text life to 21,000 or reach out to him at Guardian Rock Wealth and learn from John, not just the differences and the similarities between 401ks and IRAs and Roths and SEPs and Keoghs and all these other acronyms and things you have. More importantly, understand how to build a portfolio that supports your life so that you can enjoy life, you can enjoy retirement, and things will be taken care of because you've got somebody like John Browning in your corner. So, John, that's helpful. I know we could go on and get more confused, but that's the beautiful thing about you is because you're an expert, you know this stuff inside and out, and I know who to call when I have a question. So thanks for being on. Thanks for having this podcast, for educating me. And I'm pretty certain a lot of people in your listening audience are more like me than they are like you. And that's why we need you in our life. So thanks for being here. Thanks for the podcast. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you next time.